Given the success and the fantastic sound of the Social Network soundtrack, I had a lot of high hopes for this soundtrack. It wasn't quite what I expected, but I wouldn't say I was disappointed with it either. What made the Social Network soundtrack such a fantastic musical achievement is that David Fincher told Trent Reznor to make something that sounded cheesy and 80s and 8-bit. And because Trent Reznor has historically been so zealous about avoiding anything that would come off as cheesy or tacky, sometimes to the extent of spending fuck knows how much money on music videos that never got released because they never met his high standards. Telling Trent Reznor to explicitly aim for cheesy produced something that is still pretty explicitly imbued with Trent Reznor's genius, but is still very distinct from anything he's done before. The score for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is a bit more traditional, a bit more conventional in terms of a film score. It fits in far better with other film scores. This is a soundtrack that sounds like a soundtrack. It is still, however, identifiably a Trent Reznor soundtrack. It's not a John Williams soundtrack, it's not a Danny Elfman soundtrack. It does bear some resemblance to a David Lynch soundtrack, and I hope now that Trent Reznor is getting into the movie scoring business that David Lynch will get Trent Reznor to score his next movie. I think it would be a perfect fit. A lot of the tracks on this album have a very sort of Eraserhead-esque kind of sound to them. And as far as movie scores go, this is really good. But given the fact that it's far more conventional sounding than the Social Network soundtrack, I doubt this one's going to win an Oscar. Given that this is a score and not an album of proper songs, it's kind of hard to pick individual tracks that are listenable on their own, divorced from the scenes that they're meant to enhance. And also, unlike a conventional album, this thing is long. It's almost 3 hours of music. But a few tracks did stand out. 1,000 Details has a very sort of vintage Nine Inch Nails kind of sound. It was one of the few songs that I could see myself actually putting on just to listen to for its own sake. Please Take Your Hand Away has a fantastic moodiness to it, and I like Infiltrator, Great Bird of Prey, You're Here, and Cut Into Pieces because they all have that great electronic sound that so many of the best tracks on the Social Network soundtrack had, but instead of being cheesy, they're really sort of heavy and haunting in a subtle kind of way. And Itch is also good for the same sort of reason. Overall, this album is pretty comparable to Ghosts, Nine Inch Nails' all-instrumental album, with of course the exception of the 2 vocal tracks. The cover of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song is fantastic, and I know some Nails fans who, when they first heard it, they didn't know it was by Trent Reznor and they thought it was crap, but I genuinely enjoy it, not just because it's by Trent Reznor. Maybe you have to like Zeppelin to like this cover, I don't know. The video is great too, and I'm glad Trent Reznor has stuck to his policy of not allowing film clips to be put into the videos for songs that he's contributed to movie soundtracks. The Bryan Ferry cover track, Is Your Love Strong Enough, is almost completely a cappella at the beginning, with the vocals being done by Mrs. Reznor, Mary Queen Mandig, and I think this is a fantastic reinterpretation of this song. The cover art was done by Rob Sheridan, who has worked with Trent Reznor as his art director for quite some time now, and he directed the videos for Hand That Feeds and Survivalism. And I sort of met him once. When I tell this story to my friends, they're like, that doesn't count as meeting him. But once I was waiting in line to get into a Nine Inch Nails concert, and Rob Sheridan came out to take some pictures of the fans, and I was sort of sitting on the curb, and he kind of stepped over me and was like, oh, excuse me, and I was like, oh, sorry. And although I didn't formally introduce myself, I think that should count as meeting him. Hi friends, if you like this review, or if you don't, let me know. Let me know what you think of this album, and if you like my other reviews, subscribe.